This is Big Podcast.
It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. Hey, how are you doing? I'm David Hooper. BigPodcast.com is the site. This is the podcast about growing your podcast. It is about spreading a message with your podcast. It's about making money with your podcast, with your message, making the world a better place. God knows we need a little bit of that right now. You can do it through your podcast. I'm going to tell you how to do that. This is the audio edition of my newsletter. It's called Big Podcast Insider. It comes out every Friday morning, New York time. If you want to read along, that's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Here is what I'm talking about in this issue. Friday the 13th, your lucky day? Best practices for Instagram Reels. That's a great question. How many times do you hear that? Afros and audio. What do those two things have in common? I'm going to tell you. The devil's hairdryer. Subscription revenue for podcasters. Also some classified ads, things that will help you grow your podcast, spread your message, and make the world a better place. This episode of Build a Big Podcast is brought to you by Riverside.fm. Riverside.fm is the leading platform to record studio quality, remote podcast and video. It records locally on each person's computer, so you're getting the highest quality audio. The thing that I like about it, though, is that it's easy for your guests. Guests are not technicians. We are lucky with some guests that they are talking in the correct side of a microphone. Don't add to the guest problems. Make it easy on them. Send them a Riverside link. They click on it just like any other normal link. They go to the Chrome browser. Immediately, they're in the Riverside studios, and it's recording that high-quality audio that I talked about. It's recording it locally. Then it sends it to the cloud. That's when you get it. You don't have to worry about this underwater sound, clips, skips, none of that. Because Riverside is getting it all just as if you were in the same room. They're going to let you try it for free. Go to riverside.fm. You get a couple of hours. That's going to be enough for an interview or two. Check it out. See how you like it. If you want to stick around, and it's so easy, I think you're going to. This is a discount code. It's going to get you 15% off. Here it is. Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. That URL again, riverside.fm. The discount code to get 15% off now and forever. Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. Hey, quick housekeeping. I am playing around with a new audio interface. Dan Hughley from Focusrite sent me this. It is the 4i4 model of the Focusrite Scarlett, the 4th generation, new preamps, some cool new buttons on it. You might be familiar with the Air button. It can make a dynamic mic sound a little bit sweeter, kind of like one of those fancy NPR condenser mics. And I'm using a great mic, a broadcast mic, an RE20. You might be familiar with that. Everybody and his brother has one. I wanted to play around with it. Click the Air button, and there are 2 settings on the Air. That's the difference in the 4th generation. Not only do you get that presence, but there's an option for presence and drive. So I'm trying that out now. You say, Dave, you sound a little bit different. Well, that's this Focusrite. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know. There's some cool new features. The other thing that I've got on this is a safety button. It makes sure that I'm not clipping, because I'll be honest with you, man. That presence, it was hot, hot, hot. And me, I'm already coming off a cloud lifter. I'm coming off this mic preamp that I got, the DBX 286S, then going into the Focusrite. So I had a lot of energy, and I'm kind of shouting. So from my mouth to the lifter, to the DBX, and then to the Focusrite, that was a lot. Well, not a problem when you've got this safety, because it's like a governor, man. You peek out, boop, it's not going to let you do that. Turns on instantly, catches that hot audio before it goes to tape. Anyway, if I'm sounding a little bit different, that is why the Focusrite 4i4 4th generation, the 4th generation models of the Focusrite Scarletts are out. Worth looking at? Yeah, I think so. This thing is cool. It has a headphone mix that I can use that is different from the mix that I'm recording and different from the mix on my backup recorder. So you've got all sorts of options to do whatever you need to with the audio that you're capturing. Anyway, thanks to Dan from Focusrite for letting me check this out. By the way, this is issue 150 of Big Podcast Insider. About 3 years old. That's how long I've been doing this. And I've got a new daily newsletter launching next month. That is going to be called Big Podcast Daily. If you like what I'm doing here, you want daily tips, tricks, strategies, and humor, because let's face it, podcasting, there's a lot of funny, quirky things to laugh at in the podcasting world. That's going to be at daily.bigpodcast.com. There's almost nothing there now, but if you want to get that first issue, be a founding member. This is free, by the way. Go ahead and go there, sign up. If you don't like it, you can always unsubscribe with one click. Like I said, it's free. I think you're going to find it helpful. daily.bigpodcast.com. As far as this publication, Big Podcast Insider, I plan to continue it. So you'll still get that in your inbox. If you go to newsletter.bigpodcast.com, you'll still get these weekly audio issues like this one. And you know how this works, right? I go from story to story to story on the audio version. And because everything's about podcasting, because it would be easy to get confused, you're going to hear this sound in between them. Easy enough, right? It's like an old school children's audiobook. When you hear this sound, turn the page. That's what we're doing. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com if you want to follow along. Let's go. Friday the 13th, your lucky day. The print issue of this newsletter came out on Friday the 13th. A lot of people think Friday the 13th is unlucky. And that's actually because of a combination of two superstitions that we've got. One is the belief that the number 13 is unlucky. The second is the belief that Friday is an unlucky day. Let me give you the podcasting version. There is no Friday the 13th in podcasting, but, we've got our own folklore, the 8-week window. You've only got 8 weeks to get an Apple Podcast new and noteworthy. Some people think this is true. That leads podcasters to rush things, get things out, get too many episodes out, launch before they're ready. You don't have 8 weeks to get into new and noteworthy. And who cares about new and noteworthy? It was a thing way back in the day. This is what I talk about with rumor and folklore. A lot of the stuff that mattered in 2007, 2008, 2010, whatever, we're still holding on to that. I think we've got to look at where we were and say, does this still apply to us? Does this still serve us? I'll give you an example of this. One of the YouTube things that used to be is that if you had subscribers, those subscribers would see your YouTube videos. So people would say, smash the subscribe button, whatever. More subscribers, more views for your videos. And that makes sense, right? But nowadays, you can subscribe to a YouTube channel. You're not necessarily going to see that video. YouTube, in their infinite wisdom, they're serving you videos based on the videos you've previously watched, based on what you're searching for. It's not necessarily what you've subscribed to because they know people change. You might have been interested a year ago, 5 years ago, but you're not necessarily interested now. At least you're not searching out those videos and watching them. You're searching something else. You've moved on. So YouTube serves you that. Anyway, the 8-week window, folklore. That is not true. Another one. You need 10,000 downloads per episode to get the attention of the advertisers. Not true. You heard me plug in Riverside.fm. Do I have 10,000 listeners per episode? No, this is a niche podcast, man. But you know who does listen to this podcast? Podcasters. And who needs Riverside.fm? Podcasters. If you've got a niche audience, 10,000, no. Now, if you want Coke, Pepsi, Ford, Chevy, legacy brands that cater to a general audience, yeah, maybe 10,000 listeners per episode, that's a good number. And 10,000 listeners, hey, that's not bad. If you can get them, get them. But I've seen this time and time again. You can make the same amount of money with 1,000 very specific listeners as you could 10,000 general listeners. So consider that. Bottom line is you do not need 10,000 listeners per episode to get the attention of advertisers. Third rumor, little podcast folklore. The performance of a podcast within the first 24 hours determines its future success. No. Some people say it only counts towards your downloads in the first 2 weeks. Once you release it, that clock is ticking. 15th day, doesn't matter. You know, there's some advertisers, certainly. They're advertising something very specific. This Wednesday, we're having a sale on this. Obviously, that's a timely thing. But for the evergreen content, no, man. No. Sometimes podcast episodes from way in the past will come back. I'll give you an example of this. Somebody dies and you got an interview with them. People are searching for that person. Popularity is based on what people are searching for, what people want right then. It has nothing to do with when you release something. And something can be a slow start. I see this a lot with music. Something just doesn't work. And then it does work. 3 or 4 years later, people say, oh man, that was a sleeper hit. It comes around again. There's a song you might have heard of, this, I would walk 5,000 miles and I would, remember that one? Well, that one hit the club, kind of fizzled out. It was a moderate hit. Then I don't know, something happened to it. And all of a sudden it's everywhere. That's an example of that. Podcasts are the same way. And another way we're the same way is like any form of media. We've got our own myths, our own superstitions. And that's exactly what they are. I don't know how they start. One person said it, then another person said it, then another person said it. It's like a game of telephone. We don't question things. It happened once. Oh, it must be that way for everybody. No. If you got hard work, creativity, engaging content, you're going to have success in podcasting. Yes, luck is involved. Absolutely. But most of this luck, we are creating it on our own. That's showing up, putting out great episodes, staying in touch with your audience, doing what your audience wants, being engaged with your audience. That's how to make a podcast successful. And again, you don't need 10,000 people or whatever the arbitrary number is. You just need a few. I talked about this in my book, Big Podcast. I know guys got a podcast about bug extermination. He's got an extermination company. Hadn't hit 1,000 downloads per episode. Killing it. Because he's got a good back end. He's not trying to reach everybody. He's trying to reach bug exterminators. More thoughts on this and links at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Let's talk about Instagram Reels, best practices. Are you using Instagram Reels? If you are, you're going to want to look at these best practices from Nick Gray. They are directly from Meta, the guys who own Instagram, Facebook. And they're coming from the Instagram Creators Program. Here are the topics covered. Consistency. What did I just say? Number one for podcasting, and apparently number one for Instagram. Trending audio. Again, what are people searching for? Hashtags, length, comments, republishing, CTAs, call to actions. If you're doing Reels, you might as well make the most of them. Take a few moments to review Nick's info. Hey, speaking of Reels, I mentioned the Scarlett 4i4. I did a quick reel on it. If you want to see it, get more information about it, I've got this link, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. And if you're promoting your podcast via Reels, I want to know about it. Reach out to me, Pebble, Blue Sky, Mastodon, any social media. I've got those linked too, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. That's a great question. No, it's not. Probably not. I mean, maybe it is. If it is, you need to let people know why it's a great question. How many times you in an interview and you say something like, how did you start? I mean, the absolute worst question. That's why I'm using this as an example. And somebody says, that's a great question. No, it's not. It's an awful question. This is what we call prefacing. And people do it because they're trying to stall. And if they're not trying to stall, if they're doing it because it's a verbal tick, just a habit, it sounds like you're trying to stall. If you want to go deeper on this topic, Freakonomics, you ever read that book? Man, it's great. TV show, great. The podcast, great. They did an entire episode on this. That's a great question. You're going to find this both hilarious and also useful. By the way, if you're interviewing somebody and the guest does say that, that's a great question. Cut that shit out. Edit it, man. Edit it. Unless they say, because blah, 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 blah. I mean, throw your guest a bone. It is not an ego stroke on you. I hope you're not believing that. Man, I'm a great interviewer. Everybody tells me I've got great questions. No, they're just stalling. Anyway, if you want to go deeper, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Afros in audio, October 21st to 22nd in Baltimore. You may be asking yourself, why is a middle-aged white guy talking about afros in audio? I'll tell you. We have got to support independent podcasting events. These are the events that cater to us and they connect us with each other. The corporate podcasting events, they're ignoring us in favor of things like ad tech. Ad tech, that doesn't affect 90% of podcasters. It is for networks. It is for big media. Last week, I talked about Pod Indy. That's November 4th in Indianapolis. That's another one. If you're near Indy, if you're near Baltimore, I suggest you look at these events. Let's get into it. Afros in audio, what is it? It's not for me, but it may be for you. It's a community of independent podcasters dedicated to curating accessible, exclusive events and spaces for and by Black independent podcast creatives and audio professionals. No, I'm part of that. I'm an independent podcast creative and audio professional. If you're listening to this, you're part of it. I'm sure no matter what you look like, how you identify, Afros in audio, they're going to be cool with you there. However, this is specifically for Black independent podcast creatives and audio professionals, and I love that. One of the great things about podcasting is that it allows us to segment down and talk with people who are just like us and dealing with the same things that we are. Let me go on a little bit of a rant here. Do you mind? Okay, cool. Fast forward 30 seconds, if not, maybe a minute. You may be thinking, Oh, but we're all the same. Can't we just come together? Yeah. We can. But you, specifically, you are dealing with things that some other people are not. I'll tell you, middle-aged white guy, you know what I deal with? Everybody thinks I'm conservative. Everybody thinks that I'm racist. Everybody thinks, right? Because that's the stuff that guys who look like me are putting out there. So there are a lot of assumptions about me and the content that I release. Same thing for people who will go to Afros and audio. Same thing for people who will go to any specialized podcasting event or have a podcast in general. I work with a guy named Brad Shreve. He's got a podcast called Queer We Are. Queer We Are. Middle-aged gay dude. If you were to ask him about Queer We Are, he'd say, yeah, it's good news, man. I want to spread good news. There's too much negative news in this community. I want to change that. He is dealing with some very specific things as a gay man. 1, stereotypes. 2, negativity. He's trying to change that. And if you're a gay podcaster who's dealing with the same stuff, you're going to have a connection to him. Because of who he is, he's going against some very specific things. Because of who I am, I'm going against some very specific things. We are all going through very specific things. It is great to connect with people like us. And it is important that we support events like this. Without us, they are not going to be around. So these 2 events, Afros and Audio, that's October 21st and 22nd in Baltimore. Also, Pod Indy, that's November 4th in Indianapolis. Pod Indy, speaking of middle-aged men, unfortunately, the money for that is going to prostate cancer research. It is a good cause to support beyond just podcasting. More information on these 2 events, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. The Devil's Hairdryer. When I wrote this, there was a construction crew outside of my house, and they were literally cutting into the street with a gigantic circular saw. Big sewer project. It was loud as hell. Loud as hell. Every Monday, my neighbor, he's got some guy with one of those gas-powered leaf blowers. Doesn't matter if there are any leaves or not. It's like loud as hell. Just like the circular saw. There's a joke. You'll appreciate this. The world is a quiet place until you hit record. Then you start to notice everything. Quick tip for you. If you ever get into this situation, more specifically, if you've got a guest in this situation, you're doing a remote interview, all of a sudden outside the guest door, something's going on. This is how I work with that. So do you want a laptop? A lot of times people are. Take that laptop, take your mic, go into an internal, that's helpful, walk-in closet with lots of clothes. I'm in an internal closet right now. There's not any clothes in it because I turned it into a studio. But internal closets with the clothes, those clothes are going to absorb sound, reroute the sound. It's going to sound better than most offices. And because of that, you might want to do this anyway. But you're going to have some walls in between you, whatever's outside of your house. If you want a more robust solution for dealing with outside noise, I've got plans that I can send you at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I mentioned being in a closet. Yeah, it's a closet, but I've turned it into a studio. I've actually got a room within a room. I've got some padding, and then I've got these huge sound barriers that are made of rock wool, which is basically insulation. It's got beyond perfect absorption of sound. So you say, David, why do you sound so good? Well, it's a Focusrite 4i4. We've already been over that. But also because of where I am. You want to see it? You want to get the plans? I've got everything linked. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Subscription revenue for podcasters. Subscription revenue is great when you can get it. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that it changed my life. For a self-employed person, if you're doing this on your own, there's no day job, there's no check coming in, to know that some money is coming in consistently every month, every week, however you got it set up, that is game changing. That lets you plan, that lets you relax a little bit. It is great. And as podcasters, we've got a lot of options for subscription revenue. I mentioned setting up a new newsletter for podcasters on Substack. Again, daily.bigpodcast.com. That's where that lives. They have a lot of recurring revenue options available for you. That's more or less their business model. So when you set up something on Substack, they say, are you sure you don't want to take money? I'm doing it for free. But even then, they're not getting you out of there without saying, hey, we could ask if people in the future want to sign up and pledge money just in case you do decide over. They really want that recurring revenue too. So if you want to look at that, daily.bigpodcast.com. Again, there's no cost, but you'll see how that business model works. Maybe be able to set something up yourself. There's also something called Supporting Cast, and that is worth looking at. It is a tool to sell and deliver exclusive podcasts. If you're doing audiobooks, courses, memberships, it can handle those things also. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. Take it back to the Substack thing. They're asking people, hey, you want to pay $8 a month for this? You want to pay $100 a year for this? Whatever. You set your own price. And I said, no. I don't need to do that. I'm making my money other ways. So I don't need to do that. You might not need to do it either. But I think the concept is something you're going to really relate to. If you want to see all this stuff, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I started selling subscriptions in the 90s. I had the very first membership site that was not an adult site. I had to get an adult merchant account. I had to go through a bank in California. It was crazy. The software, yeah, that was adult too, because nobody else was doing it. You know, the internet, that trail was blazed by the adult industry. Videos, the reason we got YouTube, well, you can thank the guys who put porn up first, because that was the market with people who were willing to pay money for it. Anyway, I've been doing the membership thing a long time. How that actually came up because I was in the music industry, and we have memberships in the music industry. Fan clubs. You want to be in the ZZ Top fan club? Okay, it's $100 a year, and you're going to get this funky keychain, and you're going to get a fake beard, and you're going to get whatever. You know, we've been doing this forever. So I said, why don't we just put this online? Yeah, that's what we did. You can do it a lot easier than I did. You don't have to go to California for that merchant account anymore. It's more or less a one-stop shop with something like Supporting Cast, Substack. You could set this thing up tonight, be ready to go tonight. It is that easy to do. Subscription revenue for podcasters. I've got more information for you to take advantage of this at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Some classified ads for you. Swell AI automates writing podcast summaries, articles, social posts, and more. You can manage multiple podcasts in a single dashboard, build custom templates for each podcast. It connects directly to Google Drive, Dropbox, and Zoom. If you want automated episode notes, social media content, Swell AI is a great piece of software for you to use, and you can get started for free. I've got it linked, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. AudioPen. This is the easiest way to convert messy thoughts into clear text, including podcast outlines. Pick up your phone, hit record, talk into the AudioPen app, and start rambling. Hey, AudioPen, I want to do a podcast episode about blank, 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 blank. Just start listing stuff off, start rambling, train of thought thing. Hit that AudioPen button. It prints out an outline for you, or an article for you, or a summary for you, whatever you want it to do. It's very powerful. There's a free option. I've got it linked, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. When you are ready, this is how I can help you even more. If you like the newsletter, you're going to love Big Podcast AMP, the audio monetization program. This is a podcast coaching program. It has been designed to help you do three things: grow your podcast audience, get people talking about your podcast, and make you more money with your podcast. I've got all the details at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Go there at the very bottom. You want to work with me? This is the very best way to do it. I had a call today with my guys from AMP. Let me tell you what we worked on. One guy's got a couple of TV appearances coming up. He's got a live event that he's putting together. People coming from all around. We're helping him sell tickets for that, helping him make the most of those media appearances. I've got podcast producers, guys looking for clients, guys looking for more listeners. Had a guy today. This is great. He's an MC, host. He does the work once via voice track, meaning he records his voice once. He's going to be in hundreds of clubs as the MC. Every club, they are paying him money. That's the kind of stuff that we work on. If you're interested in this, it's at the very bottom of newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Big Podcast AMP is called Audio Monetization Program. It's about monetizing your podcast, your voice, the skills that you have. Big Podcast AMP, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Thanks for listening to Build a Big Podcast. Here's how to subscribe. This will make sure that you never miss an episode. And by the way, I apologize for this. I said the next episode, I was going to take you behind the scenes, my interview with Dolly Parton, the before, the during, the after. It's taken me a little bit longer than I thought to get that together. But that is coming. That's the next episode for real this time. And if you want to subscribe to make sure that you do not miss it, this is how to do it. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe. It's very easy to subscribe. It just takes one click. I've got an iPhone button, an Android button, an RSS button. 3 choices. You pick one of them depending on how you listen to podcasts. iPhone, Android, RSS. Click it. You're instantly subscribed to Build a Big Podcast. You will never miss an episode. I've got a QR code. If you want to scan it, hands off, baby. I make it easy for you at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Go there right now. Subscribe. And I'll see you on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast with Dolly Parton, the before, the during, and the after, all about how I got the interview, how I did the interview, and what happened afterwards. See you then.